This video is here to demonstrate the fight against the Solar Pillar. The Solar Pillar is much like the other pillars in terms of the variety of enemies and whatnot, but I would say it's different in one key respect. It doesn't like you being up in the air, and so if you have a flying mount or wings, you're going to want to use them sparingly. I won't say don't use them at all, because I certainly do, and you'll still probably want to, but don't use it all the time, because those long snake-like creatures, which I believe have the name crawltipede. I realize all the names in this game are pretty silly, but those crawltipedes, if you're up in the air, will do tremendous amounts of damage to you. They're the equivalent really of the Stardust Dragon, in that while they're hovering over you, you're constantly being dealt damage. And so, especially if you don't have a high armor level, you're going to want to stay grounded just to avoid damage from those creatures. In terms of the remaining opponents you'll face, most are pretty forgettable. I would say with the exception of the spinning enemies that you see moving through blocks and flying through the air. I believe those are called Korites. They're like Sonic the Hedgehog in the air, basically. They're not necessarily hard hitting, but they're very hard to avoid. You can't barricade yourself against them because, as I said, they'll travel through blocks, so bear that in mind. In the duration of this fight, you'll see me using the vampire knives. I would suggest using those at least part of the time on all of the pillar fights, because in this fight and in other fights, you'll find that your health can dwindle pretty rapidly, especially if you're not paying attention. And so it's a nice insurance measure, so you don't have to start all over again. Other than that, there's not really too much to say. Once you defeat the requisite number of opponents, the barrier over the pillar itself will go down, and it should be smooth sailing from that point. It has been for me, but again, get vampire knives if at all possible. Even if your world doesn't have crimson, I would suggest creating a small world with crimson, and then just rushing to hard mode so that you can get them. They're that good. They really were a game changer for me anyway. So there you have it. This is pretty much wrapping up the fight right here. When the barrier goes down, the pillar has no chance whatsoever. Once you defeat the pillar, you'll get a number of solar fragments, which can be used at the altar you get after you defeat the Lunatic Cultist. And you can make some pretty cool gear with it. So that's about it. I hope you found it at least somewhat useful. I appreciate you watching the video. Like it if you found it helpful, and by all means subscribe to the channel.